I'm Deb Flashenberg and I'm the founder of the Prenatal Yoga Center. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about why I chose a home birth. Besides being the founder and director of the Prenatal Yoga Center, I'm also a labor support doula and a certified Lamaze teacher and a mother of two. So not too long ago I had one of my students, actually a couple of the students, ask me about my birth experience. And I don't usually come straight out and talk about that I had a home birth, but I will talk about the experience. And what ended up happening is some of them got a little confused from how I was talking. They're like, well, where did you give birth? And I explained I did choose to have my babies at home. So let me back up a little bit and talk a little bit about home birth and kind of how I came to that. So one reason home birth I think surprises people, because here in the US, home birth is not particularly common. About 98% of women have their babies in a hospital. And so other places it's a little bit more common, like the Netherlands, for example. They're about a 20% home birth rate. Now the difference I'll definitely say between the US and the Netherlands is they're very much set up for this. Their system, they have a lot of very trained midwives. Not that we don't, but they have a lot of them. Like that's a part of their culture. They also have an emergency system set up that should something happen, the transfer is very well established already. And interestingly enough, last year, the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, I'm make sure I got all those letters correct there, they recently came out and said that for second-time moms in particular, they're encouraging women to consider home birth. They consider it for second-time moms especially it a really safe option. So it's kind of exciting that in Britain things are shifting there. It's also a lot cheaper to have a home birth. All right, let me back up a little bit to the whole 98% of women having births in hospitals here. So one would think, okay, so if 98% of women are having births in hospitals, it must be extremely safe. We must be having wonderful outcomes from that. Now, interestingly enough, even though our country is spending a ton of money on births, most of the births are in a hospital. Unfortunately, our maternity care is not the best. So I just actually looked up some information. So from World Health Organization called WHO, let me see, what was it? It was 1 in 1,800 women had a maternal mortality rate. So that's 1 in 1,800. That's not so great. And out of developed countries, we rank 33 out of 179, which is really not that great. So here we are spending a ton of money. The majority of our births are in a hospital and the maternity mortality rate is pretty upsetting. Let's look at infant mortality rate. And this comes from the CIA World Fact Book. And out of 222 countries, the best being Monaco, we rank 168. We are between Serbia, which ranks better than us. Now this was last year's numbers, I don't think things changed, and Poland. So what they're saying is 6.17 deaths for 1,000 babies. So again, not so great. And as I mentioned, Monaco is number 1, and that was 1.81. So, I'm sorry, 1.81. All right, so that's a little bit about just the statistics and background. So let me go back to my own personal choices. So as I mentioned, why did I choose home birth? So having been a doula for many, many years, I had seen what I'd seen what hospital births were like. I'd also seen what home birth was like. And for me, I didn't want to be in a hospital. I felt if there was a problem and I was some reason risked out, then yes, of course, I would transfer to a hospital for the health of myself and my baby. But what I saw in the hospitals actually scared me more than the idea of birthing at home. What I saw was a lot of women that were, not that they weren't treated well, but they were just kind of passing through the system. You know, they were wearing the hospital gowns. It was very cold. They were hooked up to a lot of machines. They had a lot of routine interventions. They had a lot of IVs. There was continuous monitoring. Even when there's intermittent monitoring, you know, there's still a lot of wires. And I just didn't want to be hooked up. There's a lot of people in and out of the rooms. They never knew exactly who their care provider is going to be. And honestly, the idea of that scared me. I didn't want to fall into routine interventions. I didn't want to be set on a schedule or a clock. And now I'm extremely, extremely fortunate that I didn't have my baby, my first baby, in a hospital, because had I'm guaranteed I probably would have had a C-section, because my first birth was long. I had a trained midwife, I had my husband there, and I had my doula. And I'm very fortunate that they had no schedule as to when I needed to give birth. It was slow and methodical. My son was safe. They kept checking his heart rate. It never went too high, it never went too low. My blood pressure was fine, never a sign of infection. My water didn't even break until it was time to push. But had I been in the hospital, they would have said, this is too long, baby's not going to fit, failure to progress. But fortunately, because my midwife and my doula and my husband worked with me and my body and my baby, we adjusted my body so my baby could come out. So I'm extremely, extremely thankful that I did not have that particular baby in the hospital. My second was very quick, so yay! I was really thrilled with that. No, what was that?
No schedule.
Yeah, someone just commented, no schedule, yay. I know, it's wonderful because in all honesty, my first birth was 42 hours and that never would have happened in a hospital. So I want to talk a little bit about those that are considering a home birth, just some tips. So if you're thinking about having a home birth, okay, what do you need to do? First, you have to make sure that you are low risk. So if you have preterm labor, if you have gestational diabetes, if you have preeclampsia, those things are going to risk you out. And there's a few more things that could risk you out. You also want to have a qualified medical team. Now, I'm going to say, I know there's a movement of having unassisted home births. My opinion is have someone that knows what they're doing. Like personally, we interviewed different midwives and I had a few criteria in mind. Like I remember one midwife, a home birth midwife. One of the questions I want to know is if there's postpartum hemorrhage, what would she do? Now I had the answer of what I needed to hear in my mind, but I had one midwife that said, I'm going to get some herbs and I'm going to massage your uterus. Now the massage I wanted to hear, but I'm like, herbs, wrong answer. I wanted to hear a little bit more medical. And that's just me. That was what I needed to hear for my comfort. Maybe someone else is fine with the herbs, but what I needed to hear. So I had some criteria. So we interviewed home birth midwives and we found a wonderful woman who unfortunately is not practicing here in New York anymore, but she was great. She did both my births and she was fantastic. The other thing is you do need to have a backup plan if you need to transfer. You know, and here in New York City, we were only 12 blocks from a hospital, and I was in really good fortune that my OB that I'd worked with for that point 14 years was completely supportive of me having a home birth, and even said that he would be the backup should I need to transfer. So unbeknownst to me, during my marathon labor, my midwife and my OB were actually having conversations as to how things were going and if I would need to transfer, and if I did, he would be there. So if you're having a home birth, you need to have a backup plan. I even had my bag packed just in case I needed to transfer, and I felt like if the bag was there, then I wouldn't have to go. Unfortunately, I didn't. And then you also want to make sure that everyone that's going to be there is supportive of you, including your partner. Now, I was really fortunate that my husband was completely on board. I think if he hadn't been, it really wouldn't have worked out because you don't want anyone in the room not supportive of your choice because it's a big choice and you don't want to feel vulnerable and really take that negative energy in of someone that's second guessing. And then lastly, you also need to be honest with yourself. Some women say they love the idea of home birth, but when they really think about it, that's just not their choice. They feel uncomfortable. They might love the idea of it, but they want something else for themselves. So that covers a little bit about why I chose a home birth. I just felt for me and my baby and my husband, we needed to be in our place. And interestingly enough, that I remember during my first birth, the idea my midwife and doula said, do you want to take a walk outside? And the idea of interacting with anyone that wasn't in my birth circle, it didn't sound so good. So those that are out there, I hope this is just another piece of information to think about and just maybe another option had you not considered it in the past. So for all my pregnant mamas or soon to be pregnant mamas, I hope this is a choice that maybe you'd consider. And if you have any further questions on either my experience or just my thoughts on it, feel free to tweet at me. You can also reach me at the Prenatal Yoga Center, simply deb@prenatalYogaCenter.com. So I hope everyone has a great night. Take care. Namaste.